the races, okay? He thought blacks were an inferior race, and, he also wrote a book, The Passing of the Great Race, which focused on Nordic supremacy and keeping blacks subservient to whites, okay? This book was liked by Hitler, basically, okay? And they said that Hitler referred to this book as his Bible, So Grant, also refused to hear the black minister's appeals for Ota Benga, okay? The New York Times published an article basically saying that, they were confused about why the ministers are appealing, about Ota Benga, okay? The New York Times made their view very clear that pygmies were less than, humans, okay? They believed it too, the editors of the New York Times, okay? And they believed that it was absurd to keep up a fuss over Ota Benga and said that he was probably enjoying himself, okay? Now, some believed that school would be a place for torture, okay, for Ota Benga, and it would serve as a disadvantage for him. Now, I don't know when learning has become a disadvantage, but I guess at this time it basically is. The black ministers once again stated that Ota Benga should not be used to prove Darwin's theory on evolution, okay? But guess what? The New York Times responded again by saying, please inform the black ministers this evolution is now taught in the textbooks of all the schools and that it should not be debated, just like you don't debate the multiplication chart, okay? The protests continued and rowdy crowds now started coming to the zoo to visit Ota Benga, okay? And on September 16th, 40,000 people came to the zoo to see the newest attraction, okay? And according to some of the press reports, mobs of crowds chased Ota Benga, around the zoo all day, howling and cheering and yelling at him, okay? And some of these people like poked him in the ribs, and others they tripped him so they could laugh at him, So Ota Benga, he responded by shooting them, with arrows, okay? And then the zookeepers returned him, back to the cage. Now, Hornaday became more defensive as the zoo got out of control. He now said he kept Ota Benga in a cage for convenience, okay? The controversy continued over Ota Benga, okay? Which, made Hornaday finally wash his hands of Ota Benga. So an agreement was reached to move Ota Benga to the Howard Colored Orphan Asylum, okay? He later went to a seminary in Lynchburg, Virginia, okay? And it was there in Lynchburg 10 years later, after being there for about 10 years, that Ota Benga shot himself to death, okay? It had been 10 years after he had left the zoo. Now, at one point in time, Ota Benga did want to go back to Africa, but by 1916, the continent was being ravaged by Europeans, so, he could not return. And some say that, Ota Benga's hopelessness, trauma, and loneliness, made him commit suicide. He had not seen his family or been in his, civilization or natural habitat, in years, okay? The New York Times finally, did basically admit in their own way about Ota Benga. So they said that Ota Benga was actually an employee of the Bronx Zoo and hired to feed the apes. That was the way they had worded the obituary in the paper. Okay, this article actually was an unofficial report, okay, about the truth that Ota Benga was, being held in the park as an exhibit in the monkey cage. Okay. A few things I want to point out is that this is basically just an outrage when you hear about the way that blacks were treated. When you hear about this, we never probably think to put together science and racism. But as we can see from this story that science played a big part in this theory of evolution and where humans come from. And we all know where we come from. Okay, we know our foundation. We know our source. Okay. This was actually very sad, when I found this information, and I wanted to share it with you guys. Like I stated, I'm going to keep coming back to back with this, underground information. And there is going to be a part 2 to this video, because after the death of Ota Benga, and after the human zoos kind of died down, there was another should I say theory, or there was a whole nother sinister plot to get rid of black people, okay, and people of color, or people what they consider to be of lower standards. So I hope you enjoyed this information. Again, please don't forget to share, like, and subscribe to my channel. I promise to continue to bring you more and more of this underground information. And believe me, there is nothing that will be hidden that will not be made known. Shalom.